We're in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I am the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I am so excited to welcome our next guest onto the interview series, Alex Seiler. He is the Chief People Officer at GHJ. Alex, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to speak with you. I just saw you in real life last week. If you want to share a little bit about yourself for our listeners, including your pronouns and when you were younger, do you remember how exactly you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah, it's great to see you again, Christina, especially so quickly after the conference that we were both just at. But lovely to be here. I'll start off by saying, yeah, my pronouns also are he, him, and I'm openly gay. I'm half British and half Swiss, and I was born and raised in Hong Kong. I've also been in the people and HR space for almost 18 years, and I've worked across a number of different industries in both generalist and specialist roles during the course of my career. And obviously with that background and experience in mind, diversity of all forms, I hold very near and dear to my heart. As far as the question goes, I actually majored in politics and history when I went to university in Cardiff in Wales. And so I thought I would work for an NGO or for the UN or something of that nature. I grew up learning German and French as well, and other languages, or even going into sort of translating or interpretive work. I think the benefit of something like politics in the HR people space is it's really also about the act of compromise. So I think it's really helped me in my career as well. So I'm really thankful for what I've done. Some people don't always see the immediate connection, but I'm glad I ended up doing what I do today. And it's not just something I have been told I'm good at, but also that I actually enjoy.
Absolutely. I think that is a perfect storm of things that you are good at and things that you enjoy doing, those good old moments of flow. Alex, is there anything, outside of what you shared in terms of your background and your personal experiences that you would say defines you as a person?
Yeah, I think for me, it's really about what defines me are really my beliefs and my passions. I won't go into, I'll name a couple of them. The list is probably a little too long, but in all of the people I love in my life. So I think all of those things come together and just make me feel whole, essentially. A couple of things I would call out, though, specifically are my sense of integrity. I've always been very focused on my brand and making sure that the work that I do has the highest level of integrity. And I've always stood behind the work and made sure I could stand behind the work and the things that I do in life, whether it's professional or personal. My empathy and my sense of gratitude, I'm very thankful for where I am in my life and in my career, and that's not lost on me. And I think that the moment I ever lose that, or if I ever do, I really need to kind of make space to ask that question, why, because that really does help define me. And then I think the other thing is, I think part of that is I'm a Taurus, is my star sign, and we're known to be quite loyal. And so my sense of consistency and sticking to my word is really important to me as well.
Yeah, loyalty is really important. Integrity. I'm also a fellow Taurus, so that's definitely an adjective people use drive me as well. And I think that impacts how you show up as a leader. People can really feel that, especially at work too, and an organization as a leader of the people team. I know there's been so many conversations around the time that we're in, around the Great Resignation, the Great Reset, the Great Reshuffle, whatever you want to call it there. Has GHG been impacted by kind of the time we're in now? And if so, how?
Absolutely. And I think a variety of different ways. I'd say, so first of all, that for people that don't know GHJ, we are a business and accounting advisory firm. So, and to know me is to know that you would have not necessarily thought of me being in an accounting firm, but I think what I'm so excited about being a GHJ for is we're kind of the unaccounting accounting firm. What we do isn't new, but the sort of what we are doing from a people and culture perspective is so progressive and very much like a tech startup. So that's what really lured me in. As far as going to your question, I'd say a couple of things. Looking at the data, first of all, there are less college students taking accounting degrees, which means the labor market is challenged from a supply versus demand perspective, and it makes it harder to find the talent in the first place, right? And then I think with that in mind, during the pandemic, we shifted from operating in California to being a US entity in 22 states. And now 40% of our workforce are 100% remote entirely. And part of that reason or that strategy was because we were struggling to find the right talent to grow our business in just California, particularly in our tax and audit functions. So we let the market dictate where to find the best talent. And I'm really proud of our leadership for listening to that and adjusting our strategy to sort of really meet our people on our business where it was at. I think the other thing that we're seeing a lot of, and I'm sure, is it's happening across the board, is a lot of companies are throwing a lot of money and promises of promotion at early career employees who find it hard to say no to that relative to staying for the culture or other intangibles that I think individuals further on in their career weigh more heavily. So I think that's been a couple of things we have noticed. And then I think last but not least is, you said sort of great reshuffle, there's the great resignation. I also call it the great reassessment. So I think for some people, particularly maybe in tax or audit, they've realized, that's not the right career path for them. And they've decided to pursue a new or different one, which, I can respect that, having had those moments of reflection during my career as well.
Asking yourselves really important questions and just checking in. And you mentioned that you have 18 years of experience here, and the organization operates like a progressive, startup tech company too. What would you say is the difference between that quote unquote good or okay place to work to the great, this is where I can do my best work workplace environment?
Absolutely. So I've been here for about 4 months now, and I've been astonished already by the culture of care that exists here. So, as I mentioned before, part of what defines me is leading with empathy and gratitude. And I see that in spades here at GHJ, which, again, reminds me that they sort of walk the talk on their core values as well. I think another thing that makes a great place to work is a sense of belonging, where psychological safety is really amplified. I've worked at companies where that's not always been the case, or where people have struggled to be their sort of true and authentic self and speak up. And I think companies that allow their employees to really feel that sense of safety really benefit from a stronger workplace with a sense of belonging as well. I think flexibility is key. It's part of our core values as well. And then I think it's something else that really lured me in to GHJ, for example, was focusing on long-term growth and potential. So upskilling is one of our core pillars in achieving growth as a firm. And I think, you have to think about how to grow and develop your people for bigger jobs down the road. I do think consistent, clear, and collaborative leadership is really important, as well as an entrepreneurial mindset. Like, I like to talk to my team, and I like to, as I always say, similar to the Netflix proposal of, you want to, set context but not control. I really want to give them their freedom to chart their own course. I find really important. And then last but not least, I would say knowledge sharing. So I think communication is a challenge at every company. So ensuring we are using as many vehicles as possible to ensure employees feel connected and understand the direction of the business, and our employee value proposition makes a difference between a great versus a good place to work as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree that having that psychological safety is important, feeling like people can speak up, and if they have that entrepreneurial mindset that they can give ideas and they won't be judged for it as well, and building that kind of sense of belonging. And I think to do that too in terms of having ownership and everybody feeling that they could give those ideas, there's also an accountability piece to not just Alex creating the company culture of the organization, but also everybody from managers, from kind of new hires that started yesterday to 5 years down the line. I know accountability is something that is very important to you. So I want to ask, how are you holding folks accountable to be culture champions no matter where they sit at GHG?
Yeah, absolutely. And having seen me on a panel, you do know how important that is. And I would start that with a question in terms of how can we measure our effectiveness if we don't hold ourselves accountable? That's where I struggle with companies that don't put accountability, at the sort of forefront and sort of front and center of their strategy. Because at the end of the day, though, accountability is cultivated. Though you don't figure it out on day one. It takes time to get there. It takes time to get people all on the same page. But when all employees are invested in the same vision of the company's success, the natural result is also greater cohesion and alignment, along with a happier and healthier workplace environment. So a culture of who don't need to be micromanaged, eventually reaching every level of the organization. So right now, I myself, along with others, am leading on a growth pillar on accountability, which is focused on personal ownership around our performance and goal setting process, for example, because we want employees in the firm to be part of the process that they are bought into and take ownership of where we land. I'm also holding my people team accountable. The leadership team has invested in scaling and transforming the function. But what that also means is now that we need to deliver on our promises as a people function by curating a really robust and stellar people strategy as well.
Yeah, I think it's really important to kind of operationalize that accountability, have pillars, share them out, and continue to be agile as well. Work together with the people team and other leaders, as you were talking about. If the last 2 years has taught us anything, it's that we can't predict everything that's going to happen. And speaking of the panel that you were on, it was about kind of post traumatic growth and thriving in uncertainty and change, which not everyone can do. So I want to ask, what has prepared you to be so agile and really thrive in that uncertainty and unknowing, which is scary?
It is. It's very scary. And I try not to take it for granted because I know not everyone does the work that I do day in, day out. And, so there's a couple things that I think have really served me well. One is the ability to really adapt rapidly, by having sound processes and a flexible mindset, right? So, I like to ensure the standard of making sure I have the right people, processes, and technology, but also having a very flexible mindset that can change depending on what you're dealing with. I think also rapid decision making is also important, right? You don't want to make mistakes, but you also need to be prepared to pivot on a dime as well. And I think being able to make sort of concrete and clear decisions and stand behind them, very much sort of a bias for action, is really important. Always remembering, I think, especially in this role, that people come first. I'm a big believer in simplicity. To me, that's golden and it's key. The moment you start making things very complicated is where sort of mistakes can sort of fall into the bucket. And frankly, then you can sort of lose track of what your objectives are. And last but not least, I say this to my team all the time, is being focused and intentional about the work that you do, prioritizing priorities. We can't get everything done on day one. And frankly, the business isn't asking us to do everything on day one. And so we need to focus on what's the right work we need to be doing at the right time of sort of the evolution of our people strategy as well. So those are the things that I found to be really critical in order to be successful.
Yeah, I think that simplicity part in terms of effective communication is key too. I think it's Brene Brown who says clear is kind. Um,
Mhm.
and I think that, having one goal and one mission and really communicating that out to the team is super important, and having that flexible mindset, knowing that things are bound to change. And also people are at different parts of their leadership journey, of their kind of career path. And I want to ask too around that kind of level of ownership. How do you empower folks across the organization to practice that equity driven leadership, manage across difference, and have that sense of belonging and hold leaders accountable there?
Yeah, I think one very clear example of that is through our employee cohorts. So we intentionally don't use the term resource groups. We use the term cohorts because cohorts is really about bringing people together to create that sense of belonging. So right now we have a BIPOC cohort, we have a parenting cohort, and we also have a women's empowerment cohort. And we're looking at the possibility of also creating a LGBTQ plus cohort as well. All of these have been grassroots, and it's really been to sort of help amplify voices as well, and also help leadership understand what our employees are thinking and feeling and what they need. The other thing is we put structures, a governing structure in place. So I'm part of our steering committee as well as other leaders in the firm. And I've just hired a people engagement manager, and his responsibility is also going to be to act as the connective tissue that weaves throughout all of those cohorts and provides consistency to them as well. And I think the other piece is just building clear programs, making it more programmatic, and also looking at things like scorecards, like holding ourselves accountable to whatever goals um, that we put in front of ourselves. So there's clear intentionality around it as well. And we've also set each group up to have its own sponsors as well as its co-chairs. So they feel like they're being advocated for as well. So I think, using data as a friend, making sure voices are amplified, making it programmatic and consistent. I think that's the way to help people feel empowered. And making sure that it's just not one or two people that are driving this agenda. It really needs to be everyone coming to the table and participating. We use the term a lot at GHJ, don't be an audience member, be a participant. So we encourage everyone as part of sort of psychological safety to really engage as part of it.
Yeah, for that sustainable change to make people feel like they are heard, seen, and understood, you need everybody's collective buy-in and to take
Mhm.
action too. And I love that saying. It's kind of similar to be your own main character in your life and really take that action as well. I mean, it sounds like you are very passionate about this work. I'm sure the folks who are involved in the cohorts are raising their hand. This is something they're passionate about. And people are very burned out by the work they're doing, especially if you care so deeply about it. What are the tools that you're providing managers to really address this burnout?
Sure. I think for burnout, I think it's been more about, particularly, I mean, no big surprises, really things around mental health. There's a number of things we're looking at. I can't speak to some of them right now because there are actually some things we're talking about internally that haven't been launched more broadly. But I think mental health is top of mind. Obviously, things around mindfulness. We have the Calm app. There's a lot of different sort of day-to-day things. We've brought in some different motivational speakers, taking the time out for our managers to really show up as leaders. And so we provided some coaching around that, because obviously coaching is very different to mentoring, right, as well. So looking at things of that nature as well. Making sure people are taking the right time off and modeling the right behaviors when it comes to that as well. And then something that we do that is great, I think, from an engagement standpoint, is we bring all of our employees, whether remote or local, into our headquarters 3 or 4 times a year for what we call for a firm-wide week. And it's a way to really just like get to know your colleagues, understand what's happening in the business. There's a lot of informal activities, just general ways to connect. So my point with burnout is you have to constantly watch it and know that there's not one way of reducing it. There's going to be different levers that you have to pull, and be prepared to not have a one size fits all approach to it, because everyone when they hit burnout and what creates stresses for them is different. So just keeping that top of mind.
Absolutely. We're not box checkers here. We're thinking about the entire kind of journey of the employee to from workload to having kind of benefits like the Calm app to having motivational speakers to kind of having that conversation with your manager too and feeling psychologically safe to do so as well. And I would argue too that 20 years ago, we weren't talking about equity driven leadership. We were talking about mental health benefits in the workplace or as much as we are now. Is there anything that you would say with your experience is a must have now for people leaders to be successful in the future? What do they need to be thinking about?
Yeah, I think part of it, what they need to be thinking of is, I know for me, that's top of mind, is making sure that, there's a foundational arc and baseline to your people strategy, but one that can be revisited and reassessed on a periodic basis to ensure, it still meets the needs, the business needs, and also meets where employees are at. I think in the past, people revisited their strategies, you know, once a year, maybe every 3 years, and could get away with that. Now, as you can know, with what's happened with the pandemic over the last years, if you fell on or approached your people strategy that way, you're kind of dead in the water, because so much will have happened, and so much will have changed both within the business and for your employees, that you would have missed some really great opportunities from
Right.
an employee experience standpoint as well. So I think really the big focus is you can't wait as long. You need a baseline strategy, but you need to be prepared to revisit it periodically. And that could mean, depending on the organization, every 6 months, not even every year. So I think that's critical. And that's going to be something I'm doing with my team.
Yeah, nothing can be set in stone. I think it's towing that line of being strategic, but being open to feedback, testing, iterating. Nothing is ever going to be perfect. So you need to kind of test it out and see how employees and kind of your team is feeling too. I saw kind of this question in the diversity in academia, and I love it. I've been trying to incorporate it more in these conversations for the interview series. So, Alex, want to ask, how does your privilege serve you in this work, and how are you using it to create more equity?
I know. I'm glad you asked this question. I think first and foremost is educating myself. I mean, as I mentioned before, Christina, I'm openly gay, but sometimes I think I get put under obviously the umbrella of the LGBTQ with the assumption that I understand even those other letters in detail just because
Yeah.
I'm part of the community, and I don't necessarily. So I even have to educate myself about my own community because I'm only one letter within that, and people forget that. So I think whether it's within my own community or communities I'm not part of, educating myself is key. Listening is also key, and amplifying voices that haven't necessarily had a voice in the past is critical. I already mentioned previously, but creating those grassroots employee cohorts to create a sense of belonging is really important. Making it clear that you don't have all the answers, and are continuously taking a learning posture and a growth mindset is really important. And I'd say last but not least, I know it's a little overplayed maybe and a bit cliche, but it is very much true, is be an ally. I can't claim to know what certain minority groups or communities have been through, but I can be there to support them, right? And ask, how can I help? What can I do? And I think really that's how I try to use my privilege in the workplace, because again, I recognize that I have it and I have had it and I'll continue to have it. So anything I can do to help others that haven't been as fortunate, I'll make happen and I'll do.
I love that. It comes back to that internal work and that self-awareness. No group is a monolith, and Alex is
Mhm.
definitely not the spokesperson for entire cohort of folks as well. And we need to remember that. Also, no unpaid emotional labor is also my thing that I think about as well. Alex, is there anything that I didn't ask that you want to share with people who are listening, or underscoring 1 to 2 key takeaways you hope people really bring with them or think about after hearing our conversation today?
Yeah. I think just two quick things I would say, Christine. I'd say one is, don't be afraid to be bold. I've got to where I am in my career by taking risks, albeit calculated ones, but they risks nonetheless. And I think, again, one of the things that brought me to GHJ that I really appreciated was their core values, which are bright minds, brave hearts, and bold actions. That really resonated with me, particularly the bold actions piece. And the other thing is, be authentic in everything that you do. If you aren't, that can really end up tarnishing your brand. And like I said, for me, integrity is key. So that's the last thing I would ever want. So I think being authentic, whatever your environment you're in, is key to how you show up.
Yeah, be authentic, be bold, and really lean into that integrity and check in with yourself also to make sure
Yeah.
that you're continuing to live these values and holding others accountable too. Alex, as always, it was really great to speak with you this afternoon.
Lovely to speak to you as well.
And as a reminder for folks who are listening, at AllVoices, we really believe in that employee feedback management as a requirement for the organization to succeed overall. Have a great rest of your afternoon, everyone.